Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy podcast. This is Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks, and joining me, as always, are my fellow stasis, podded, comatose, feeling crew.
Adam Zeller, aka RidgeTop.
Greg, also known as Still Collating from the Boys.
Erick Adams, also known as Xenomorphine.
This episode, we are discussing the third and currently final Predator story from Marvel Comics, more specifically from Ed Brisson. Is it Brisson? Bryson? Can you remember what he told us on the podcast?
You're pulling this on me now. I thought it was Brisson.
Yeah, I thought it was Brisson because I thought I said it before it was Bryson, and it's like no, it's Brisson. Okay, but yeah, the last currently announced story arc by Ed Brisson dealing with Theta Bestwick.
Although the ending does pull the end, or is it?
I think all of them have done that, to be fair. Or the ending for
really?
now. The end for now, I think, is at least how the first run ended, if I remember rightly. Now, I'm going to pass this one, I think, over to Greg to start us with. So obviously Greg also didn't join us on the first two discussions. So Greg, if you want to give us a very quick rundown of how you felt about the first two arcs before you give us a quick and dirty thoughts on the last hunt.
Of course, would be happy to. Regarding the first two arcs, when we were first introduced to Theta, I thought it was an interesting new perspective for solo Predator comics, having it set in the future. This was also interesting as in we got a continuation of the separation of the Predator universe from the Alien universe. So the future in the Predator timeline, technology is advancing a bit quicker. It was interesting to see the world building and to see it from perspective of a character that's devoted her life to hunting down these predators. I thought that in the first one it was a bit iffy with the body count Theta had regarding the predators, a bit too much in the sense that it would have been more interesting to have shown the rising body count, but I really enjoyed even in the first arc where there were the few issues where the trap was set for Theta. And when she thought she found the predator that had massacred her family, and that in that dark ship, that was very, very interesting. I liked how the premise was changed for the second arc, having that reference to the Predator's hunting preserve planet. I'm also quite a huge fan of Predators, so was very excited to see that setting revisited again. And I thought it was well done, especially how in each of the arcs, Theta has been getting more and more punished by the predators. They have been shown to start to adapt to her methods, and that she has been slowly but surely becoming weaker with older age. The wear and tear on her body has been obvious, and her losing a few limbs along the way has also been a good reminder of how deadly these creatures can be. So with the third arc which we were discussing now, the last hunt, I thought it was a really good conclusion in that sense that a lot of years have passed. That was something that was very interesting to me as well, that we've got that quite a big time skip for Theta, and also I don't know if we're going to mention right away the surprise character cameo, or yeah, with the appearance of John Schaefer, was also a nice come back to see him as well. So I'm generally quite quite satisfied with all three stories as an arc. There, I have a lot of small nitpicks here and there, but I am happy how that first Theta trilogy, if I really call it, has been presented.
Okay, cool. How about yourself, Adam? Quick dirty on The Last Hunt.
I think I'm largely on the same page as you, Greg. I've been pretty satisfied with all three stories. I also have my nitpicks. Main one for me is we've had a couple stories now where the second arc takes place on the hunting preserve planet that is assumed to be the same one in Predators. And in this specific comic, we're dealing with this larger, beefy predator, which the opening text in one of the issues refers to him as a super predator.
I wept.
And
I wept, Adam. I
I
bet
know
you,
you
I
like
bet
that,
you
Aaron.
felt it coming.
He had another name too in another one of the issues, like the Nightmare Hunter or something
Yeah,
like that.
Greg, not Greg. Ed gave him a name as well when we were talking to him on one of the previous
Okay.
episodes.
So I just feel like I don't know if this was intentionally supposed to be one of those same predators from Predators, but it's
It
still,
definitely was. It was.
as a
It was
fan
supposed to be a super predator.
of that third movie, I get frustrated when the only iterations of like the super predators we see are exactly the same as predators, or they're just regular predators but beefier, like what we see with the upgrade in the Predator, which is kind of what this one reminded me of a little bit. I'm like, hey, there's some physiological differences between the predators we saw in that third film and just your standard predator. It's not just a bigger, more muscular predator. So I do wish we'd see more of that subspecies in presented
Artistically.
in a way that's more in line with predators, because you do have those thematic elements here, like the predator dogs straight from the third film brought back in this issue. So don't mean to open it up completely with a complaint there, but overall, looking past that, for me, I do really like Theta's arc here. I like the development of her with her friend that she's brought along since the end of the first issue, or end of the first run, Paulo. And the incorporation of John Schaefer I thought was well done here. Bit odd with the second cover, given that just does not happen at all in the story. uh, but overall, I feel like the story was interesting. I do think there's maybe one more story to tell with Theta. I'm curious to see what's going on. Another survivor at the end of the second issue, she mentions in this one, Aja, I think, saying she's now working with the OWLF. And I was like, ooh, I'm curious about that. Maybe we could see more of that in the next issue. So I do feel like I could have more after this. To me, it's just kind of right in line with 1 and 2. They're solid. Um, Overall, yeah, mostly positives though.
How about you, Eric?
I thought it was an entertaining read. I think Predator stories tend to do one, two things. Either they go down the blood and carnage and it's war type of thing, which is largely what you get with the encounters here, or I prefer the ones where it is more of an obvious hunt, which goes back to the original thing. That's what Predator stories should be about. And yeah, we get this bigger, beefier Predator, but he doesn't really do anything a normal Predator couldn't, in my view. So yeah, there's a bit of a mystery in it. You do have that character come back, although he didn't really seem to serve any purpose aside from reminding the audience I exist. He didn't contribute anything from his past which had an impact on these events. It was just like he's another character who's been captured. So it's very much a cameo in all regards. Yeah, it was a straight A to B thing. You do have her mention, oh, they figured out how I'm tracking them. They've altered their ways, and it would have been nice to see what they did to alter. What were they altering? How did they figure that out? But it's very much just an exposition thing of that's what they're doing. So she hasn't been able to catch one for a while, and now after all these years, she's found them. They do go into more about the mechanics of game preserves, which was kind of interesting, but it's not anything you couldn't already guess. So kind of an A to B kind of story, but it was entertaining to read. It's just it goes for the sort of blood and carnage Predator fan rather than the how does a cat and mouse hunt type of thing work, including, as was said, they do have the dogs, but the dogs are literally just unleashed on them. They're not used to herd the prey, which was an interesting concept in the film. And here it's just another weapon to throw at people. So I was a little disappointed they didn't use the elements the plot had in a more creative fashion. But it is what it is. It's another one in this series. There was nothing overly wrong with it. It's just, those are the things I noticed. That was all.
I think fair comments from pretty much everybody all around. Even Erick's critiques there. I don't disagree with any of the things you've said. Really, I really enjoyed this though. In spite of there being more that could have been done with some of the elements, I've really enjoyed Ed Brisson's run on Predator, and I've come around a lot to Theta. When the first series came out, it was very much a jumping ahead to a Machiko after Ryushi. Very much. It was them wanting to achieve that level of that kind of character. And Ed pretty much said as much to us when he joined us on the podcast previously. They didn't want to tell that part of the story. They just wanted to get to the meat. And in some aspects that was a detriment to Theta, or to our reaction perhaps to Theta, because the Predators are supposed to be this fucking fearsome force out there, a threat, a terror to any mildly competent species out there, and just jumping to her having killed 20 something predators at the time was a bit a bit pooey. But before I reread this in prep for today, I went back and I just reread the entire run. I started with Day of the Hunter, I went to the Preserve, then went to this. And you know what? Now we're at the end, and I've already sort of taken a journey with Theta. Going back to her from the start, I liked her a lot more in that initial run than I did, because I've already had this time with her. I've already had this experience of her competence and stuff like that. That it worked a lot better for me. I've enjoyed all the series so far though, and this was another solid one to me. It's been very nice to see Theta grow, develop, lose limbs, to see her sort of choices change or affect her mentally, especially like with the whole drug thing. I was like, you know what? That is actually a really cool concept and a really interesting way of her delivering a final FU to the Predators. It was very on brand. It very much demonstrated her knowledge of her prey. So that was cool. Artwork, really enjoyed the artwork in this run as well. I think they've all been strong, all of them. For this one, it was Francesco Manna on arts, and Erick Arciniega. I'm terrible with these.
Interestingly enough, there was a different artist just for the third issue.
Was there really?
Yeah, I could tell the art style had changed slightly, but
yeah, you're not wrong. That actually looks a bit more
Changes
like
were very minimal.
yeah, they did maintain the style pretty well. but
It was the same colorist.
yeah.
So you had Ida Messias and Jonas Trinidade on inks. So yeah, I hadn't actually noticed that, Adam. Thank you for catching that. But yeah, it wasn't a particularly huge change in styles as well, obviously, because I didn't notice it. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with this, and we can start talking specifics if folk want. What point should we start with?
I will just kind of jump off where we were there. I really did like the artwork for the whole run. I thought the the pencils, the colors, they were all really strong for me. Didn't see any of the obvious tracing that I'm always on the hunt for, but so that's appreciated. I really love the aesthetic look of the Predator armor that Theta and now Paolo wear, which is interesting. Her friend played more of a support role in the second run, whereas this one he's out there with her with his own set of Predator-esque armor, hunting them with her, and he's a bit insecure about that. And I thought that was an interesting plot point for the story.
I know the runs actually, the series is our Theta's series, but I've also enjoyed the time we've spent with Paolo. Obviously it hasn't had as much development as Theta has, but it has been fun to see him try and step up, I suppose, or almost have a little bit of conflict with Theta. Obviously he disagrees with her a bit in this one and stands up to her, and there's obviously more that's taken place over it's about 15 years they've been together now, 10 years, something like that. And there's a comment he makes in one of these issues where it's like, it's nice to hear you agree with me. So it's little bits of moments like that were nice character wise. But artwork, sorry, we were talking artwork.
Yeah, I kind of sidetracked myself there. So, yeah, I feel overall the artwork is really strong. There's a lot of striking panels. Even though I was hoping for a bit of a different depiction of the Predator, I still think this Predator has an interesting look about him. He has this big kind of katana looking weapon, and just some of the panels where he's just slicing people up left and right in a big massacre. I feel like the artwork here was, I mean, you just open the comic and as a fan, it looks appealing. It looks like something you can get into. There are some pages where there's a bunch of smaller panels, and the artwork's a bit more rough there, but I still think it conveys the action very well.
Any thoughts on the artwork, Eric or Adam? Eric or Greg?
The way it started out was probably my favorite part about it, where although they did have those sort of Star Trek-esque type of, what is an alien? Let's take an Earth thing and give it a slight difference with the deers. We then got to see this sort of these Lovecraftian horror things that the Predator's going up. Those are really nicely designed, and I'd like to see those make a return. But yeah, the art was nice and fluid. Did feel efficient, which is always good to see in a Predator thing. So I thought it got that sort of dynamic, fluid feel. But yeah.
So, big fan of the artwork. I haven't even noticed that there was a different artist that did the third compared to the first two arcs, which is really, really interesting to me, and quite a nice thing, because I personally am a fan of visual continuity, even in the art style when we have a singular story. Of course, if it's short story and anthologies, that's another thing. But if it's a one continuous arc, it makes sense for the visual art style to be similar. And in my head, Aliens Defiance popped in when that was a running series with how many, less than 10 issues, but some of the art style changes there were quite jarring. They weren't bad, but it was quite, for me, when I was first reading, jarring to go from one chapter to another and have such big differences. So I'm very, very glad here that even if there was another artist that visually it was so similar to that, as seeing neither I nor Aaron notice that. So very, very smooth and very professional there, honestly. Generally, when we're talking about the art style, we can talk about specifically in this last issue. I'm also a very big fan of the coloring. I have to mention, it reminded me a bit of the older comics. I'm not really sure what aspect exactly, but uh, I think it's something to do with the darker tones or the level of contrast, but uh, something in that visual style felt to me a bit more old school with the Alien and Predator comics instead of the 90s and 2000s and 2010 type of comics that are available. Um, Regarding to visuals, artistic depictions there, of course, I'm a fan of the Predator. The Predator, how he was designed. I do agree that yeah, it's a bit too muscular, a bit too regarding the body, a bit too generic in the sense of just like the upgrade Predator, just big muscly. But I also really like the armor, not only Thetas and Paolo's, but I liked how in the last hand, but also in the previous arcs, the Predators had uh, interesting armor designs. They were uh, they are not jarring, as in completely different. They have a similar note throughout, but quite a lot of variation there, and I really liked seeing the differences each had. I also do agree that. The action was depicted well, but regarding to this nightmare predator, let's not call him super predator, but this nightmare predator, why is he so much more special? It wasn't really depicted maybe most convincingly to me, honestly, and I do understand it's a bit hard to do that in comic form, uh, because unless there are specific visuals of difference in size and weapons being used, we have only images to relay strength, speed, agility. That's a harder thing to do. But so I wasn't fully sold on the idea that this Nightmare Predator was so much better than the other ones. The thing that helped that idea was, of course, the first opening panel where he was facing off against these big Cthulhu-esque creatures. That was a fun image to see. It's always fun to see the Predator facing off other alien races, not just humans. I always love that.
I think they were also in the second series in the Preserve. I think they were the ones that all the survivors sort of ran into very early on before the River Ghosts.
I don't remember before the River Ghosts.
Yeah, so there was like a tentacle squiddy faced one that they ran into, and one of them got sucked up in. I'm fairly sure that's intended to be that same alien species, which I thought was nice. I enjoyed that little bit of continuity there.
You vague memories of that now you mention it, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're jogging my memory a bit there. No, that's also a plus story-wise to have these repeating creatures. I was very, very, very happy to see the Predator Hound Dogs again. They're not used a lot, but are an extremely fun and interesting idea. I adored how they were depicted regarding the action. Uh, when there was this one panel where the Predator Hound Dog just bites on the throat of one of the people who volunteered to help. But at the same time, the spikes on the rest of the body punctured through that poor victim. So it was very visceral, and it depicts how specially bred these creatures must be, that if they are coming to bite you, then you're not just going to get a face full of teeth, you're going to get literally pointed through. So it was a very visceral depiction. I did like that. The sword for the Predator, I also want to mention that yes, the hilt looked a bit katana-like in some panels, but I did appreciate that it also had a guard for the hand, which I don't remember if any other Predator type sword has ever had that before. That's very interesting to see how that looks on a Predator wielding that, and I honestly like that depiction. I'm happy whenever interesting variations of weapons are done, not just complete human-like weapons. Even the blade, of course, was predatorized with the curves and everything. But I like the small variations they put into making a little less human type of design there. So very much appreciated art-wise. The only gripes with the art that I had is not even how well something is drawn, but just stylistic choices, which you have probably mentioned before for the other issues. But having the Predator helmets for Theta and Paolo with the dreadlocks, something that was constantly just bugging me whenever I saw that. And they take off the mask and it has the dreadlocks, and I'm thinking, wait, does that mean that a Predator, when it puts on, they have their normal dreadlocks, but then they have a mask with added dreadlocks, so it's a two-layer dreadlock thing, artificial and organic ones.
Or they're just staying undercover.
Yeah, that's
it would have helped
funny.
to differentiate, well, both of the human characters when they're going up against predators, because they look very similar, and having no dreadlocks would have really helped to differentiate them. Although when you're talking about the sword, my first thought, they've made like spikes on the handguard, which was good for predatorizing, but it did have that effect of making the predator look a bit like what's called a mole ninja, where you can get those really ornate swords that, you use them once and they just fall apart. And it looked like he'd become a mole ninja because he had that kind of sword. So not sure how practical it was, but yeah, it had Predator aesthetics. But I'm more of a fan of having a hands-free Predator. Like in Predator 2, it worked because the Elder had, he was old, or she, or it, and you figured, well, that's got more antiquated technology, it's ceremonial. Whereas this one is not just one from the modern age, but it's one from the future, and it's using a handheld sword. And I felt to me, that's a bit off. It's like when I see Predators using handheld guns, and I'm thinking, but the shoulder things, that's what they're for.
Personal preference, Eric. Personal preference.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Which is one of the strengths of the Predator compared to the Alien. They are all individuals, and it is sometimes nice to see that individuality on display. And I think that sort of, I don't know, I feel like that sort of antiquated way of dealing with things speaks a bit more to, I don't know, perhaps a more primal or brutal.
Kind of, but then
Predators.
if it's going back to my roots kind of thing, it still had the auto aiming shoulder gun, so it's kind of like at odds with that philosophy.
But that's also the Predator
they
philosophy anyway, that conflict of tribal and primitive and advanced. That's half the fun of the Predators.
I'm sure I did it to just say, hey, fans like this in Predator 2, let's give this one a sword again. It's probably just as simple as that.
I also liked the variations in the sword design. It did have that katana look, but yeah, I also noticed the hand guard that had blades on it. It was almost like a hybrid between like a pirate longsword and a katana, I thought. So that was an interesting weapon. But yeah, it was fun because he would still just pull out his plasma caster if he needed to. Like at the end, he really wanted to just fight Theta one-on-one, But then when Dutch restrained him, he's like, "Oh nope," and he just pulls out his plasma caster and blasts her back there. So even though he wanted just a one-on-one hand-to-hand combat with her, if it's looking like he's if the fight's not going his way, he's just going to pull out his other weaponry.
At the end of the day, I mean, I will always give the Predators shit for being cheaters. That's what they are. They don't play fair. Nothing about them is honourable. We've been through this in the past. But I will forgive the Nightmare Predator that moment because, you know, the human characters were cheating as well. That was a surprise attack. John Schaefer was not supposed to be getting involved in that at all. And yeah, I'll forgive him even in the odds.
I did find that climactic fight a little odd because it was the direct inverse to in the original film, where it removed the gun, it removed the mask, and this one wanted her to put on the mask. It was the inverse of how you usually have Predators do a right. Let's do mano a mano sort of thing, one on one. You wanted her to have this stuff, and yet she just had the sort of one blade, which is it was a little odds with how we usually see it.
I think that's actually really interesting thinking of it that way, though, Eric, because yes, it isn't about, you know, Predator was about how it wasn't about all the technology. You know, it was that back to basics, so to speak, approach to human
Yeah, the final fight.
spirit. Yeah. And actually having it be the reverse of that in this series is pretty interesting because the Theta says something interesting in this. You know, there's that panel in the final fight where she's talking, you know, she's defeated the Predator, she's injected it with that poison, and she says, "But unlike it, I'm no monster." And
She says looking like a monster.
the
But
panel
I think
itself
that was deliberate.
Well, no, that's what's interesting about it because the panel itself, she looks very demonic. You know, she looks like a monster. And it's kind of Theta wears the Predator armor. Theta thinks like a Predator. She is hunting them. She is what she despises. And having the Nightmare, having the Berserker, having the Super Predator, whatever, be like, no, you wear this armor. You wear this shit that you supposedly despise. Was a very interesting thematic inverse of it.
It's also an odd bit when the Predator has captured her, sets up this trap, lets her recover, and throws her machete. And she's like, "What is the point of this? What is the meaning of this?" I'm like, "You've been hunting predators a long
Yeah,
time. I think
that's fair.
like what
That's
this
fair.
predator's up to here." And like,
Look, she'd just come out of cryo sleep. She was a little confused. We can forgive her that one.
yeah.
I
And it was
figure-
interesting as well that when she kills the predator at the end, she admits she lost. Like it beat her, and the only way she could turn the tables at the very end was with this secret weapon that was meant for her own suicide, so her skull wouldn't end up on a predator's trophy wall if she lost. But instead, She used it on the predator himself, which was something Paolo had collected, made from this really toxic plant that they had found on one of the planets they visited.
And they didn't set that up at all, really, did they? I mean, obviously they established early on that the purpose of it was to deny the Predators an honorable kill, deny them this trophy. But it never even mentioned the possibility of using it as a weapon against the Predators. And you know what? As that final issue was taking place, it never crossed my mind at all. Oh, she's going to jab the Predator. I was like, this is actually going to be her going out on her own terms, which would have been satisfying to me. I would have actually quite enjoyed her doing that, especially as a fuck you to this Predator. But no, I'm getting terrible at seeing the twists coming, as something Greg and I was talking about off the air.
I was waiting for her to do it because I thought that was telegraphed too obviously. I was waiting for her to use it myself, so that's interesting.
I only got the idea of that 3 pages before she did it when she was reconciling that she was defeated, and I was like, oh yeah, she's going to use it on herself. Oh no, she's not gonna use it on herself. So only then did I get reminded, maybe she can do it that way, which from her perspective was extremely risky. Will she get it in time? Will the physiology even be compatibly toxic? She had no idea if that would work, but it was a last ditch Hail Mary. Uh, Regarding that last encounter, uh, honestly, to me, I think it's very interesting what Erick said, the parallel between being all geared up and being completely stripped down to the basics compared to the first Predator movie. In a sense, I actually quite like it, how it's done in the comic. Because in Predator, you can you can superficially see, yes, the Dutch without weapons, the Predator will try to level the playing field with by just using the physical strength. But if we're going to be honest, the Predator knows that they are a super strong, much larger, much heavier combatant than any human. So that was really very one-sided in that sense, which was shown in the movie as well. It's also like in boxing or MMA, you have people who are similar weight categories against each other to make things a lot more fair, not giant weight discrepancies with alien strength added. It's to me, now that you people have compared it like that, to me, in the first Predator, it seems more like a type of gloating. You're like, I'm going to have fun with you, in the sense, and maybe on a, a type of thought, the Nightmare Predator is the most honorable I have seen a Predator be in a while, even though, yeah, I agree, I don't really find them with a Yautja samurai code and stuff, but most sportsmanlike, because what else can make them on a even playing field if not the technology that both of them can use?
Games have to have rules, to be fair. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. So I honestly quite liked that both of them were going to be using uh, the maximum amount of technology they had in an arena. Both of them recovered and to the fullest. So yeah, it was kind of then for me hilarious that the humans decided to cheat, but it was also very smart because that's the only way that they could win in such a situation. Oh, and regarding the mall ninja thing with the weapons, I completely forgot that. Yeah, that's a perfect comparison to predator weaponry. So I'm probably going to be calling that in the future. But I also agree, even though I liked how it looked, yes, when the direct swords are used, I would rather hands-free wrist blade type of things, or if a sword is used in an unconventional way with the back blade, that does seem a bit more interesting to me. Though honestly, that also looks even more cool, Mall Ninja, if it's using a backsword like that. But a predator is edgy, so I don't find that completely impossible.
I have a
Just, sorry,
sorry.
uh,
Go ahead.
just to finish what I mentioned, something with the art styles. The only besides the predator lock thingies, the predator dreadlocks, why they were there with the mask. The only other stylistic choice that was that irked me is whenever we see a predator spaceship and it is so gray and clean and panels and completely looks like human technology. I know it's from the predator and stuff, but I really
I
miss the other tech.
I had the exact same thought as I was reading this, and again, don't get me wrong, I love the run, but anytime I see a Predator ship and it is not the Predator 2 style sort of interior, I'm a little bit disappointed. And I mean, that even counts for things like Thicker Than Blood, a comic I fucking love and love the artwork on, but having it based on the more recent aesthetic designs of the franchise hurts. You know, it takes away a little bit. It takes away a lot of that alien part of the Predators. You know, that Predator 2 Lost Tribe ship just added a whole other layer of mystique to their design and look. And every time that it's just this grey metallic, maybe slightly red looking ship, it's a disappointment. I mean, as much as I praise the artwork, there's a panel in the issue where John is giving a rundown of like the immediate events after the ship crashed, and he's using the Predator's console, and it looks like a fucking. It doesn't even look like the console we see in the Predator. It's just a keyboard. It just looks like an
I
everyday
noticed
human
that.
keyboard. I can't find it in the issue as I'm flicking through it now.
Yeah, there
But
was a panel with a bunch of monitors that were more alien like with the old
yeah,
stage of monitors than anything has to do with Predators.
This is Office Space Predator technology.
and that was something I actually quite liked about Predator versus Wolverine. You know, that run had a Predator 2 style looking ship in it, and I was like, yeah, bring it back. And
I think we
it's
all
always
agree that
disappointing when
we
it's
we
not.
all here we always say how to put this, we prefer them a bit more Klingon and a bit less Starfleet, to put it like that, because
But not
what
too
made
much
the
Klingon. Don't
no,
limit this on a bullshit.
in terms of the spaceship aesthetics, because the thing about that one, firstly, it brought home the tribal feel of them, which is very much how a lot of Predator 2 was very much in that, because they, the whole voodoo thing and that. But even though it was clearly a structured ship, um, it had that kind of crustacean vibe, like they'd taken their engineering cues from that side of nature, whereas we are
Well,
more
that was
geometric shapes and things.
very intentional. I think a couple of years ago, I think AJ did a piece, Voodoo Magic did a piece on the ship, and that was something they talked about in there, was this mollusk influence
Yeah.
into that ship. And yeah, I do feel it is to any visual Predator product, it's to their detriment when they don't use that
And
otherworldly.
the other thing is, I mean, there's another really obvious benefit to bringing it back into, or just introducing it into the comics, is that you give an artist those kind of visual cues, let the artist go wild with that kind of Predator 2 ship, that Aztec Maya on steroids kind of thing, make it look like full on sacrificial altars or whatever. Because I think you would at least get sort of set design in a comic where no matter what's going on in the scene, you'll be like, oh wow, yeah, that looks interesting just visually, regardless of what's actually happening. So as opposed to just like I don't know, like a TARDIS or a Star Destroyer kind of thing, it's yeah, it makes things just more visually interesting, that kind of Predator 2 look. So
Yeah, definitely.
I am also gonna quickly join the call for better ships here, because looking back through it, there definitely was some, it felt like inconsistency between the original ship we see landing, so he can activate the trap in the beginning, and then just the exterior of it later. It didn't look like it matched up to me. And even the cryo transport ship, the cargo vessel, I thought that was like a human vessel at first. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, what? Nothing in here looks Predator. And I'm sure, deadlines are tight these days with comics, but it's
Especially
just
on Marvel's sort of culture that we've heard about.
so it's just a bit disappointing. Like the last number of Predator comics, the ships have either mostly just been ripped from the movie The Predator, the most recent designs we've seen. And you think back to those older Dark Horse comics, like Bad Blood was one of them, and the original AvP run that had new original Predator ships that felt like they were in line with that design language you were talking about from Predator 2, Aaron, but were also unique designs that fans remember to this day because someone took the time and the effort to go, hey, what would a cool Predator ship look like? Instead of be like, oh shit, I got to get this done really fast. What was the last Predator ship in the last movie?
It also goes back to just a slightly veer of conversation. When we talked about the original Alien film, I think Syl was the guest star, and he pointed out that as soon as the alien arrived, the alien is a sort of character, even when it's not featuring in any of scenes. It's there for the audience. And I think if you do this kind of thing with a spaceship interior, it makes the spaceship itself a character. It gives a more of a presence to the ship as opposed to just feeling generic. And I have to say, when Adam said about at first, I thought it was a human ship. Yes, I thought that too. I thought they'd accidentally come across a human ship, or there was a human ship using a predator signal, something like that. And it was only after they'd gone through a few panels that I realized, no, it's meant to be a predator ship. So yeah, I'm in full agreement with that impression. It did make me actually feel it was a literal human ship.
I did like Theta ship again, the Sandpiper. Shame it got destroyed in this issue because that ship
I
did
was
have some character and it was with us through these
literal
3 runs.
character as well,
Yeah.
with Sandy. I was good at that. I was genuinely just disappointed that she took a explosion or plasma cast or something to the face. But just to talk artwork, sorry, because I feel like we've been ragging a little bit on it there. Adam mentioned earlier about some of the good splash pages, and one of the things I always appreciate about a comic series is when I flip a page and I go, I'd like that on my wall. And there's quite a few of them throughout this entire run. Some absolutely fantastic shots of the Predator, and even if, yeah, look at that one. That's a nice one there as well. And it's the half mask, the kind of thing we've seen show up with the feral Predator of late, and in one of the masks that the Wolverine versus Predator, a Predator shows up. But I don't think he got a nickname. I can't remember him having a nickname. But I like that. I've been enjoying seeing more of that style. I hope they don't overdo it. I hope they steer away from it in Predator versus Black Panther, but it is cool. But yeah, there was so many cool pages in this that I was like, that looks good. That looks good enough to be on my wall next to something, one of my Tristan Jones print. So I can't complain. I mean, we might be able to complain about some of the style, perhaps. Not style, some of the aesthetic choices, but the actual quality of the artwork, there's zero complaints. I think the colorist, I don't think they get enough credit on comics because ultimately the colorists are the ones that really set the tone and the mood of the visuals. And there are some very creepy, very atmospheric looking pages and panels throughout this entire run. I mean, even like the opening pages of issue 4, where it's Theta waking up in the cryotubes. It has a very nightmarish quality that perfectly encapsulates, what's happened to her over her life for a start, but also the specific circumstances of the comic. Now, that said, I do agree with what Adam said earlier about it would be nice, again, just to whine aesthetically, to see more Super Predator, Berserker Predator look to it, because yes, this looks more like a normal Predator, and I suppose to the people that dislike the original look of the Berserkers, that'd be something they'd be happy about, and I can kind of feel that with how I feel about Feral when he's unmasked, and I'm like, I just wish he was the normal Predator. But when you're leaning heavily into Predators without dealing with perhaps the narrative or cultural sort of stuff that was implied in that film. It does feel a teeny little bit out of place not to lean into that look. But again, that's an aesthetic wine. Doesn't really affect the narrative feel or the artistic quality of it. It's just I see where Adam's coming from, and I kind of agree with it.
Yes, the only problems we seem to have are the design choices. The artistic merit and the panels themselves are phenomenal, as we've said. And I also want to agree with the page that Adam pointed out, that the image that'll be stuck in my head for years to come, especially with this last third arc, is Theta with beast eyes going to town on Nightmare Predator. That looked fantastic. That is one of those that I want to have that on my wall.
I definitely agree there. And Sarah says in the comments here, sort of talking about what you guys were bringing up earlier about the presence of the ship and how it makes it feel like it's the Predator's there when he's not. You know, Sarah says, I think it's something that Star Trek did very well. Talking about your Klingon comparison here, Eric. The Bird of Prey, as an example, felt as though it had its own character, and as could Cloak, it felt like it was always present.
That was something else the Predators have taken in that film. They had the ship Cloak as well. So they're becoming more and more Klingon in some ways and less Klingon.
Which is a funny sort of comparison there. What about Theta, guys? Did you all warm towards her? Do you appreciate her more as the series, as her journey seemingly comes to an end?
I'd say so. I mean, I was kind of with you that I felt it was rushed in the first issue, but at the same time, not really. I mean, it doesn't matter so much for the story. The only thing we need to know is she was deeply affected by this when she was young, and now she's been doing this for a long time. How she got to that point, I feel, is less important. I mean, it does make for a good opportunity for a prequel comic down the road, I guess, if you want to explore that further. But for that first issue, I mean, yeah, she has racked up quite a body count of the Predators, and she brings that up in this when Paolo is like, "Oh, he cut down 20 heavily armed men and you just have a machete." And she's like, this will be like Predator 37 for me. So what's the difference?" So that was kind of funny. But as far as her character goes, yeah, you can see she's confronting I think she said she's becoming 40 in this comic, so we can relate. Um but
I'm weeping over here, Adam. I'm weeping.
but yeah, I do find her character interesting, especially when she's challenged. When she's challenged by her age or by Paolo saying, "Look, I know you have this bloodlust right now, but we really need to rescue these people because we owe it to them." Um, and again, I do feel like her story shouldn't be quite over yet. I want to see what's going on, like how this all really wraps up, especially with the OWLF side of things. I think could be really interesting. But I do think she's a great character. She's honestly memorable, right up there with the likes of Machiko for me. And so overall, as a first main protagonist for the Marvel Predator comics, yeah, I feel like she's been a really good one.
I've also quite warmed up to her throughout the three arcs, and honestly, as of now, she, she just feels memorable, and I personally like her uh, more even than the other the famous comic original character in the Alien universe, Zilla Hendrix. I've uh, I've
Yeah, I can see that actually.
I just feel like we got to know Theta a lot more, and we see time pass, and it somehow feels a lot more organic how she's been developing. And even though I adore Machiko Noguchi, we technically know Theta better. We know the traumas of her childhood. We know her life's goal, what she was going up against. We know how she has been succeeding yet paying the price for it again and again and starting to slow down. And what I loved most of all about this issue compared to the previous two arcs is seeing how age, how losing a limb, how just two, yeah, losing a limb or two, how having an enemy that adapts, how that affects a person. And it just helps. The same reason why I like Amanda Ripley. It's a simple thing, but having your characters suffer, having your main character being to be dragged through with the dirt, it helps us feel sorry for them because they're trying their best, and
it's an underdog kind of approach in that way. You know, we are very much seeing them get to their worst and then succeeding, and it's just a classic underdog tale, and it works. It works very well.
Exactly, and that's I think it was written very well that it helped me connect with her. I've been able to create a connection with this character that's stronger than with some other previous comic originals, and that's not easy because comics are limited. It's limited how many images you can provide, how many pages, how many words. It's not a full-fledged novel. It's not a series or a film. You don't have hours and hours of content with this character. You have actually very limited resources how to portray this, and I believe that it has been done quite successfully. I will definitely remember her and would, of course, have no problem in seeing her story go forward or any prequels, etc. I think it was just sincerely well done and how she interacted with new characters, how she faced her problems, how she was using her head, how her confidence was building and then shattering with each defeat. It feels varied. The stories feel dynamic and alive.
Eric, any thoughts on Theta?
I think the thing about now I have to qualify this. I didn't read the other two again before reading this. I'm going off of memories, but I've had the impression while reading this one that she's been better handled this time around. But I still don't find her a compelling character by herself. But I do think they've got better at handling Theta in a story, and there wasn't so much of the kind of Mary Sue. Well, I've killed 55 predators by now. In the way it was handled in the first one, so without that so much there's not as much to feel not offended by, but to take exception to. But yeah, I still don't feel like, I want to see more with this character. I don't get that personally.
I'm going to disagree with you, Eric. I really like her at this point. It's like Greg was saying. There is this dynamic nature to her, and throughout the three runs, we've got to see her grow. I think when we reviewed Day of the Hunter, we kind of took the piss a little bit about the end of it, where it's like, okay, she's met her goal. What's she going to do now? Oh, I don't know. Let's go do some genocide. And
I forgot about that.
it ended on a little bit of a, like, I get it. I very much get it, but it is very much it's let's go do genocide. approach to it. And the later runs, we got to see her care a little bit more, I suppose. And yes, Paolo is there pushing that, but that's also realistic in a way that yes, you do need guidance, you do need steering back onto paths because things will distract you, in bad ways, in good ways. And it was realistic to me. It was realistic growth. It was realistic portrayal. And I like I said, the underdog. We like the underdogs. Is a, I suppose, more everyday, every man, every person kind of approach to life. We're all underdogs. Most of us are underdogs. So to actually see our character succeed despite the problems, despite the obstacles put in the way, it's satisfying. And that's when a character is most interesting, is most satisfying. And in this case with Theta, it's a little bit more because yes, she loses limbs, and through her own actions, of course, through action specifically. But that is fun to see her deal with those, and the aging thing as well. Adam made a joke about it earlier. I agreed with the joke. That is again a very human, everyday, relatable problem that Theta is going through despite the circumstances, and it just all works to make her, to endear her to me, and I very much liked it. And I'm glad I like her so much because I did really struggle with that. I hate to use the term Mary Sue, because it does have
Connotations.
incel connotations these days, I guess, more specifically than anything else, in a bad way. But yeah, yes, that can do everything great already. Not seeing them struggle and learn is a detriment. And in the initial run, it was Theta was at her most interesting to me when she was demonstrating ingenuity and succeeding against problems. I think one of my favorite moments was in, I think it was issue 3 of the first run, and she's there without this armor, she's there without her weapons, and she has to find another way to deal with the predator. And she does it through using the engines of a ship or a vehicle of some form to burn the fucker to life. I mean, to death, burn the fucker to death. And that is satisfying. And that's kind of what I wanted to see a bit more of. And that's how we've got there, because she's been having to deal with her deterioration due to age, due to her cybernetics, prosthetics, whatever. And it's just made her more relatable, more satisfying to see succeed overall. So
It's because it's when we see her earn it.
Yes,
Because when she starts off, they're breaking the show don't tell rule, because we're being told she's not like, if it was a more moderate number, like she killed 4 or 5 of them, that's kind of plausible, especially with it being more in the future. But it was like a crazy number of them, and as soon as it gets to crazy numbers, you're getting to the point where, why is this character even kind of doing it? Because to them, it's like a day job almost.
Yes, it's not a challenge anymore.
And here, because we've been with her over this continuing number of stories, we're seeing her progressively earn it. Well, I think I don't know if they're going to do this, but as soon as we mentioned the whole "let's go genocide kids" thing, I think logically, I don't know if they're going to have a future story where it's from the perspective of, or she meets because you have the whole revenge begets revenge thing usually in the story. It's probably going to be like the Predator version of Boba Fett, where she's killed a predator and it's held its parents' head in its arm. And probably by this point, if she has killed that many of their people, she's getting a reputation. Instead of the predators being called, the demon who makes trophies of men, they have stories of a prey animal that wears their people's skins or faces, like the mask and the armor, as a disguise, dreadlocks included. But it would be weird if the predators didn't have a kind of legend, that's associated with her, because she is now doing to them what they do to us. And maybe to them, there's a cultural tripwire where maybe it's not they're running from them, but they actually quite like that she does that, because they're like, yeah, good on you if you can do that. Something like that. But she's probably going to run into a predator or several who they were her. Like, they weren't going to be hunters. They were going to be something else. But by her doing what she did, that made them go down the route, and they're not hunting humans. They want to go to war with humans because of what she's been doing. Like, she's killed like 5 of their grandparents or something. Because I think logically it has to do something a little different. It has to go down that route. And if it gets the consequences of her actions, that will feel rewarding to us as readers, because then we're going, yeah, that's a follow through point. So I would be surprised if something like that didn't happen. Or, as I said, from the perspective of a predator that kind of saw her in the distance, but then she lifted off to go and find the homeworld, and it couldn't get to her by the time she's gone. So it's hunting her, and it's like, gosh, dang it, you've gone again. And it's going on this crusade to find Theta, because you've got to believe something like that is happening, or that they're quite proud of her, or it's one of those moments like in Conan the Barbarian where the villain said, yeah, I made you, you're my son, sort of thing, something along those lines.
It is an interesting point you make, Eric, about her gaining this reputation among the Predators, and her becoming like a boogeyman for them, I guess. And we kind of see that with the monstrous look in that panel you mentioned earlier of her, Greg, when she finally takes out that predator. It kind of reminded me a bit of that prequel novel for the video game Predator Hunting Grounds. The book Stalking Shadows detailed Dutch taking out all these predators, and eventually he was bested by one, Cleopatra, and she didn't kill him. And it was just like, hey, I beat you, and I'm not going to kill you because you're this very like respected prey among the predators, but I just, I killed all your squad mates and I beat you, and you know it.
That's the predator equivalent of getting an autograph.
But also the whole element of Dutch becoming more predator like as he hunts these, as you play the game. That was one of the interesting pieces of lore we thought about that game, is he would say ridiculous things like, oh, another successful hunt, and it's like, oh, you're just a predator now. Like, so and speaking to the genocide a bit there, it becomes clear in this comic that she is looking for the predator homeworld. I'm like, oh shit, are you just gonna nuke it or what? Like,
She's a
so
virus now. She knows that works on them. So yeah,
yeah, that would be
probably some bad things are
that.
coming the Predator's way.
Maybe that'll be the plot point of the next one. She's like, I just want to destroy the predator planet. And someone has to be like, no, you've taken this too far. Maybe you shouldn't do that.
I feel like any more else would really lean into that aspect of becoming the thing that you hate. And I would like to see them explore that a bit more overtly with her, because it's always interesting. But kind of to your guys' point as well, I feel like this comic is that answer to the consequences of her actions. This predator is specifically hunting her because of her success. And no, they haven't gone the Cleopatra route, and perhaps we don't see that this predator's uncle was killed by her or whatever. But this is definitely the consequences of her hunting series. They have modified their hunting paths. They are not following these traditional routes that they used to, that allowed her to track them. So she is causing a disturbance to their culture and their way of life, and taking out a good chunk of them. So this is very much that series that is about those consequences.
She's going to get to their planet, and she's going to find a big statue of her, and she is now predator god because she's taken so many heads. I mean, you've got to imagine. I mean, I say that in jest, but the one that eventually catches her at the end, she does point out, well, it took all the masks and what she calls the trophies, which is an interesting term for language, that she's taken over the years of predators. So you've got to imagine it must have transmitted that news back to headquarters or something. So
he was live streaming this.
Yeah, she's been taking trophies of they know she is exactly what she's about. I would be surprised if it didn't. It seems like a plot point which
It has to be
needs
the next storyline, doesn't it?
but she is now like, she'll turn up and they'll just hand her the spear. You lead us now. We are your people.
No, it would never go that
Hey,
far.
they already
No,
did
it
that
wouldn't.
with
You're right.
Royce.
Yeah,
Right?
we don't count for the Royce stuff. We don't. That part of Hunting Grounds lore was a no. Thank you.
Well, there's another character we haven't really talked about here, which is pretty significant, which is Detective John Schaefer, the first major returning character from the Dark Horse era into the Marvel era.
And the first major Predator EU character, full stop.
Yeah.
That is a full circle right there.
Apparently still looking for his brother. Dutch. I hope Dutch
Not
has been
just
drinking
that,
his Predator
He
juice at
will
this point.
he
he's
will
wearing
never.
the same shirt and everything.
Is that the
Dude, he
shirt?
should just
that
give
he's-
up.
Is that the shirt he's wearing in Hunters 3?
I don't know.
I'll have a look. Talk amongst
Because I thought
yourselves.
I just remembered it did look a lot like we saw him in his original story. I remember him having that kind of.
And he still makes it clear that he's holding out hope to find Dutch. So I mean, maybe because apparently after the comic you're holding up now, Aaron, Hunters 3, he was captured by predators and put into one of these cryostasis farms. Again, this is an interesting concept, and I do think it's cool. We got to see a cargo ship, plays into the whole element of predators a bit more, with them collecting humans, and that's something I do want to see explored more. And so this ship crashes. Dutch wakes up, kills this predator pilot that was already injured, and leads this group of survivors to
to death.
to live on this planet for a while.
No, remember, because they unleashed some of the other aliens, and most of them get killed.
That's what we see at the start of this story. In hindsight, you realise, oh, that was what was going on.
Well, if I remember rightly, the aliens that we see at the start of the story, they deliberately let loose to try and deal with the Predator.
Yeah.
But when they all came out of hyperstasis, whatever, they accidentally unlocked some of the other Predators, and most of them were killed. I think they went down from about 200 to 30 or something, it says in the comic.
50.
It was at least 300. I have a number of 500, but maybe it was 300.
Yeah.
So it's something like
It was
that,
a lot.
which is interesting as well in its own right, because
90% of the survivors died in just that first oopsie.
I don't know if it was when AJ was doing an episode when we did the Hunters thing, and I think it was him that pointed out that there was a guy with a moustache driving a truck, and it was like, it looked weirdly like Arnold Schwarzenegger does in Profile, and we all wondered, oh, was that a setup? It wasn't. That was a predator in disguise. It had a moustache, and that's how he's been abducted.
I still like the idea of these stasis farms, these predators whose job it is to just identify interesting peeps to go and kidnap. And I really liked what Ed Brisson did here with that concept, with developing that game preserve idea. I think it'd be interesting to see some shorts of or some anthologies or one shots of the predators who are out there spying and recording and tagging these specific characters, these specific humans, because it would lean into something we don't really see terribly much anymore of the predators, and that is the hunt. That is that stalking. Of Predator 2 probably does it the best. Maybe even more the book demonstrates it better than the film does. But it'd be nice just to return to that little bit of the hunt, that kind of thing. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, John. Yes. So John does
the
like
same
his
shirt from start
Well,
to
I
finish.
don't know if it's the same, but it's certainly a Hawaiian. Maybe John just has a. I don't remember him really wearing Hawaiian in the early Predator Dark Horse
It
stuff.
could
though.
be my memory, but I remember the shot with the
I mean-
Predator spaceships and him with the. I could be mistaken.
Well, no, it's because he's
That
wearing
could be it.
he's wearing his white stuff in the original with the the police kind of vest holster kind of thing. He's definitely. I knew he was wearing the Hawaiian shirts in Hunters 3. I remembered that because I think that was a very distinctive look to him in there. So I did get a very big chuckle out of seeing him show up again in the Hawaiian shirts. And I'm actually really disappointed that his involvement in the series was spoiled with the solicitations of issue 2. You know, where he's on the cover, and yes, this scene as depicted on the cover is nowhere in the series, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't take the covers seriously. I just look at them as their own mildly related piece of artwork, and I do think this issue, you know, this second issue cover art is fantastic.
I
It's very classic comic,
I just don't like
even
how
with the speech bubble.
it's really not a plot point. And what they
No.
even have a word bubble on the cover where she's like, "You chose the wrong enemy," and it's like at no point are they really even cross with each other in the entire story. It just
It's-
feels completely
it's
off.
false advertising.
It's classic comic covers.
It is, yeah, but it makes you believe the story's heading in the direction it never
Yeah,
does.
there's
I've just checked. You're right. He just wears like a white shirt in the original, but I was sure he had a Hawaiian shirt.
Well,
Doesn't?
he does in 3. We've just looked at
Yeah,
Hunter 3.
in
He
the
definitely does
Hunters,
that.
yeah.
I think there's
Yeah,
plenty of
that
comic covers that are really well done and representative of what is actually happening in the story. If you want to do crazy wild variants, sure, but as like a main cover, I thought it was a bit misleading. And yeah, I was also waiting for that part to show up after she gets all these people killed. I thought, oh, okay, now he's going to be like, "You got all my people killed" or whatever, and that was going to be that scene, but it just never occurred.
that cover was mega clickbait. It was honestly at the end, it was funny. It got a chuckle out of me as figuring out, yeah, it was just a crazy cover, but it also did distract me a bit waiting for that to happen. And honestly, maybe it would have even been a more interesting kind of addition, use of his character, developing him instead of "Where's my brother? He's still alive. He's still alive." And never mind, it's been almost a century, but he's still somewhere out there and stuff. It would have been a different development.
I
You
do
know, that is
wonder
a
if,
really good point. He should be dead by now anyway.
yeah, but that was a point that they were making in the comic as well. Is John's like, oh well, if they captured me, maybe they've captured Alan, and um, I kind of feel like it was Ed leading into that joke of John's sort of character arc, like thereof, story direction, you know, and they acknowledged it as well. It's like it's probably not really likely, but I can't stop hoping. I I liked him being back. I'm not gonna lie, because it was a major way to say yes, we have not forgot where the EU came from. You know, especially with how Dark Horse was sort of going full circle with the hunt, you know, with Predator specifically. We loop back round to Hunters, we loop back round to these legacy characters who were doing what Theta's doing. You know, it was a story we always wanted. We wanted to revisit those characters or some legacy characters and see where they were going. And we ended on that with Dark Horse unintentionally. Of course, you know, Dark Horse didn't know that they were losing the license at that point. And to see Marvel acknowledge them was satisfying to me. Yes, the series didn't do a huge amount with John, for now, of course, but it opens that door. It opens that possibility for more than just Predator, for Alien as well. And Alien has only made little references to Marvel. We've had what the Grant Corporation was referenced in the first series. I can't think of any more overt ones off the top of my head. I just hope that we get something a bit thicker, a bit more substantial with later entries with John. But he's back. and he is alive as far as we're concerned. So I would like to see him find Dutch, and I kind of wonder if any future lore would lean on the hunting ground stuff. Maybe Dutch is still alive and kicking in 2060, whatever we're in, or is it 2080? I forget what time period this is. 2062. So he is still kicking around with his predator blood and longevity. He's had another heart or two in that time and got another 100
I
years.
just had the weirdest mental image of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but like the Buck Rogers in the 21st century, and he's going spinning around, and you just have the music coming out.
They got to do a reunion between John.
He earns it. He's earned it.
And he's like, "You never called. Why did you never call?" I was too busy drinking predator juice and hunting him.
Yeah, it'll be a synthetic, and they'll merge alien with it that way.
That's how John lives forever. He's like, the predator juice could only go so far, so I did the Alien series thing and put my consciousness in a synthetic body so I could hunt them forever.
That'd be cool. But the funny thing would be if we finally have a reunion and we find out that John was looking for Alan all this time for his brother to say, "You owe me money," something like that. Some kind of trivial reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think the smart money would be on that they are going to wait to see what probably the Alien TV show does for any stories which are set in the future. And like we jokingly just said, yeah, uploading consciousness and that, but there is the plot point we know in the TV series about the Prodigy Corporation and about transhumanism and stuff. So I think probably they're going to see what that does, and we might get something along those lines. Who knows?
Has anybody got anything other specific they want to talk about with this series? Because I think we've hit all my notes.
They were awfully quick to trust someone banging on a door and saying, "Hey, I'm a friend," when they've been hunting predators for ages and they know that they mimic voices.
Well, doesn't Sandy say it's not a predator?
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah,
Paolo
I don't know.
is resistant to them opening the door, but they just have their weapons at the ready. So I do wish they wouldn't have had that cover again, because I think that would have been a fun reveal right there, and everyone just would have been like, "Oh, it's John Schaefer." But it was interesting in the following issue. He takes her to their camp, and you meet these other characters, and some of them approach, and she's like, "Oh, and here's where the dick bags come out," or something. And I was like, "Oh, we're gonna do the thing that we did in the second issue again, where they're gonna try and betray her and stuff." And it seemed like the writer knew I was thinking that, because one of the characters is like, "Don't worry, I'll keep them in check." So
and then they are quickly brutally murdered in the next issue afterwards.
yeah.
I was like, yeah, okay, that's a bit cathartic in its own right there, because yes, Theta is very much on point of, oh god, here come the fucking dickheads. There's always one group of them. So that was a nice little moment. Yeah.
Well, they're all right. They're just going to be munching down on their alien barbecue.
That was funny. That was actually quite hilarious, and I did I did sort of raise my eyebrow a little bit at that, but I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess it makes sense.
It makes total. No, they don't have any choice, and it wasn't. I like the idea of them using the cryostatus things as basically freezers.
A freezer, yeah. It was just.
But, I think there should have been a hint of it. Not health and safety would throw a fit if you knew you were having like an organism that's evolved in a completely different ecosystem. It's not going to be safe to eat, even if you roast it or whatever. It's
I wonder how many of them died to that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Or somebody who's starting to change.
Didn't they say their numbers had gone from like 300 to 50 because they let out?
Yeah, we talked about this when you disappeared for a little moment.
Well, it couldn't have just been river ghosts. I didn't think river ghosts were that.
Oh no. There was, because we saw the Cthulhu kind of looking creatures to start with.
Okay, so it was.
It means them probably.
Okay.
Oh, well, there must have been a huge variety of on there anyway. Well, I suppose that's the implication, is that there'd be a pretty big variety.
I was waiting for them because I honestly wondered if it was they'd heard about how the Predator was going to have that thing where all the genetic things were going to come out of the ship, and I was waiting. Are we going to see the famous concept art of the Predator monkey and stuff? But on the Predator
God,
set
I
never come
didn't
out.
even,
But
I
we
never even
didn't.
thought about that, and I'm glad that
That's
did
where
not
my
fucking
mind went.
happen.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't have minded seeing just concept art. It doesn't
No,
have to be
we
anything,
ignore the
but
Predator. Come on, Eric. We don't bring that up.
concept art.
Also, another little point. It seemed like this comic didn't have too much profanity, but what there was not bleeped, which was appreciated. Because I think in some recent Marvel comics, when they've had profanity, even mild profanity, it's been bleeped, and I'm like, come on, it's an adult comic,
I
guys.
don't even think about it.
Yeah, it's, I don't know.
Insert my
Maybe
own.
it's a little pet peeve, but
Oh, fair enough. Anything else then, gentlemen?
I would say the other thing is it does gel with the rest of the series. So if you're wondering, does it fit? It fits very much.
It's a very smooth, nice narrative arc for these three, for these three series. There's no complaints there from me at all. Like I said, I sat down, I read through all three of them over the weekend, and I found it to be a very satisfying, a satisfying reading experience.
So for you would say it makes you appreciate the two earlier stories more for having read this.
Now that I've spent more time with her, yes, because I get my fill of what I think the original series was missing. In my opinion, we should have started with Theta's first hunt. We should have seen her attempt it, fail, the classic sort of, development that they didn't want to spend the time doing because, yes, we've seen this before with Machiko and blah, 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 and we didn't want to spend time doing it. But it was to their detriment, I thought. And then now we have actually spent a lot of time seeing her fail as she gets older. Not necessarily learns how to do it, but gets older. I've still got that same sort of failure and success kind of classic character journey. So I appreciated her a lot more in the past.
do you all agree with me that there's one more story left for her in the main line? Or would you like to see it kind of shift to a new character at this point?
I'd like to see her back for sure. I'd like to see some actual closure for her. If she had have killed herself in this, I would have been satisfied with it. I would have thought it would be a good thematic closure here, but she's still owed some genuine closure. What form that takes, I don't really know. Perhaps it is a case of she does try and Hitler everybody, all the predators, and somebody has to convince her, not to become the monsters.
With biological weapons, no less.
With biological weapons, yeah. I think that would be the natural conclusion for her character, for her to actually try and kill them all and be convinced otherwise. And I think it would be a satisfying way to conclude her story.
I think there's as many stories as they want to do with her because right now she, as has been said, she is basically following she's treading the same kind of path as Machiko did before she left the Predators in a way. So, yeah, actually, I think along with what I said earlier, the other logical thing is for her to come across a threat where her and a Predator need to work together, like an Ahab type character. Maybe even bring Ahab back if they got
that would be satisfying. Yeah.
Then they come to it's like there's a film called Enemy Mine. Very much, it's a classic sci-fi film.
Jr. Is it?
Yeah, and another
Dennis Quaid.
I can't. Yes, he was in it. I imagine that there'll be something like that. In which case, they will probably invite comparisons of AvP with Machiko working from Predator, but this is someone who's got a grudge against Predators. So I think probably either the direction I mentioned earlier or that where she's forced to work mutual survival with another predator. And maybe they'll combine them. It's a predator that was going to hunt her because of personal reasons, and then they both have to realize it wasn't about the trophies we took, it was about the friend we made along the way.
Well, theoretically, when you put it like that, yeah, she could fit into a future AvP story in that sense, where you can play up the conflict, trying to make it maybe to make the pairing of the human and the predator as different as possibly it can be from the earlier comic Noguchi and the AvP film one, where the conflict and the mistrust is just coming up again and again and again, and maybe have a few instances where it works together. But also, it would make sense in such a story that either Theta or the Predator, one of them, betrays each other at the end, and then the status quo continues. Generally, I would have no problems in seeing another story with her at all, whether it be one of the prequel stories in the sense of the other 20 or so predators she's killed. Maybe seeing that first hunt would be interesting to see how she learned and got some of those skills. But also a conclusion would be very interested to see how that's done. There are a lot of potential pitfalls in trying to one-up something that has been escalating from arc to arc to arc. So if any writer isn't completely sure in what kind of a storyline would be satisfactory, then maybe it is better to just leave her and retire. I wouldn't have a problem in seeing more of her, but at the same time, we might not want to have a Amanda Ripley or a Zilla Hendricks problem with constantly returning a character and diminishing their value in worse and worse stories until it's just left. Maybe we should be satisfied that it was a fun story, relatively rounded out and completed, and leave it there.
Sarah says, I could see her becoming embroiled in a Predator versus Predator war scenario. She joins one side with the plan to destroy them all, coming to some kind of conclusion of her taking the opposite action.
And we do have a film where there is a Predator versus Predator conflict hinted at. So, and again, that actually links into the preserved game planets. So that is a possibility.
Indeed. Right. Shall we wrap up then? Cool. So, again, I enjoyed this. I think it was a solid run, probably 7 or 8 out of 10 for my liking. Very satisfied with Ed Brisson's work and would happily see him and Theta return. Scores from everybody else?
I think I'm right with you. Probably 7.5 for me.
I'd give it an 8. I'm usually optimistic with the scores, but yeah, give it an 8 out of 10.
6, 7 out of 10, more 6.
Pretty much what I expected from everybody here. So, thank you everybody for listening or watching. As always, if you're just really more of a listener or a watcher and you don't participate in the rest of the community, if you want to join in and natter with fellow fans, you can join us on our message boards, which are hosted on avpgalaxy.net, where you'll also find the hub of our activity, including our news posts, our written content. We do video versions of a lot of that content for YouTube, of course. And if you prefer the absolute fucking chaos and drag that is Facebook, we also have a community, a group on there. And we're also got a page on all the socials where we share daily pictures and post all the links to the new news as it's happening. And we also have a Discord group. Is that the right term? No, Discord server. That's the right term. If you'd rather join us on there, if that's where you prefer to get your discussions in, there should be a link to that on the main page on avpgalaxy.net. If you want to follow me personally, I'm at _Corporal Hicks on Twitter. Adam?
If you'd like to follow me personally, it's at RidgeTop21 on both Instagram and X.
Greg, I don't believe you really have a social presence? No.
Not really.
And Eric, this motherfucker finally has something he can tell you about.
What?
If I unmute myself. Yeah, there's only one introductory video up there, but I now have a YouTube channel of my own. Company of Dragons, all one word, no spaces or underlines. Second or third video should have something to do with Alien 3 up there. So yeah, I'm content creating. I'm on YouTube.
And I
And
very much
Company of
enjoyed.
Dragons.
I very much enjoyed that first video. It made me fucking smile.
And what's your channel name?
Company of Dragons.
Company of Dragons. Okay, so everybody head over there and smash that like button, smash that subscribe button for Mr. Erick.
Make fun of my amateur editing skills.
And also hit our like button if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We are so close to 15,000 at the minute. And thank you once again, everybody. This has been Corporal Hicks.
RidgeTop.
Still collating.
Xenomorphine.
Not poisoning ourselves, but instead poisoning the predators.
I love all your creative things you do now.
This is all off the top of the head as well. You know, I don't prep for this bit. As long as everybody out there's enjoyed it, and you're enjoying it, Adam, I do enjoy getting your little chuckles. Thank you, everybody.